The sky was clean and blue above the Pacific when two F-22 fighter jets picked up an unknown aircraft cutting fast and low toward the USS Liberty, a massive Navy carrier floating in open waters with drills in progress. Its deck crew unaware that history was about to change, because inside that strange black jet was a woman they had buried 3 years ago, a woman who once flew for them, bled for them, and died. Or so they thought. Until she pressed her MIC and said with calm, broken breath, U.S. Liberty, this is Ghost Viper. I'm coming home. And every voice on the bridge froze because that call sign was more than a name. It was a ghost, a legend, a memory carved into steel and sorrow. And now it was back, alive and flying toward them with no clearance, no orders, no explanation, just one message. And below deck the comms chief dropped his headset while radar tech scrambled to confirm the impossible, pulling old files, running voice sprints, whispering it's her, as the commanding officer, Admiral Bryce, turned pale and clenched his fists, because Ghost Viper was supposed to be dead, declared KIA in Operation Hammerfall, a deep recon mission that ended with a silent radio, a jet downed behind enemy lines, and no body recovered, just a burned helmet and a boot with her name half melted, and a funeral with an empty box that left everyone hollow, especially her squad mates, her students, her crew, and Ramirez, her old wingman, who now sat in the cockpit of one of the F-22s. Ordered to intercept, his heart slamming against his chest as he stared at the black fighter's design. Custom, low signature, experimental. And when he heard her voice crackle through the channel, he forgot to breathe, because she wasn't just alive, she was airborne, and her voice, though rough, was unmistakable, and he whispered, Sierra, into his MIC like a prayer, but she didn't answer him directly. Not yet, because Sierra Maddox, the woman they once called the best pilot of her generation, had not come back to exchange greetings. She had come back with purpose, and the jet she flew, stolen from a Black Ops hangar buried in a desert she had crawled through for weeks after escaping a prison cell so deep the sun never reached, was the last of its kind, a prototype the government said never flew, but she flew it anyway, learning its systems with blood on her hands and hunger in her belly, piecing it together from memory and grit, because when they left her to die, when Briggs, her former commander, cut air support to cover up a dirty arms deal and labeled her team expendable, Sierra didn't just survive. She listened, she learned, and she waited, kept alive by pain and fury, by the promise of coming home not in glory, but in fire. And now that moment had come, because under her seat was a black box filled with names, numbers, orders, bribes, and betrayals. Copied from a warlord's private server she hacked while hiding inside a supply crate in enemy territory. All proof that the mission that killed her team was never about recon, but about profit. And Briggs had sent them in to silence witnesses, but Sierra had seen too much, heard too much, lived too long to stay silent. So she came back with one goal: expose the truth and let the world see what real betrayal looks like. And as the Liberty's bridge went silent, the Admiral whispered to the deck officer, clear the landing zone. Because something in his gut told him this wasn't an attack. It was something else. Something bigger. And the moment her jet's wheels hit the deck, sailors backed away, unsure, some whispering it can't be, others already saluting out of instinct. Because when the canopy opened and Sierra Maddox stood, helmet in hand, suit torn and patched, face scarred but eyes locked like iron, they knew this wasn't a trick, wasn't a myth. Ghost Viper was real, alive, and walking across the carrier deck like she never left, each step slow, deliberate, echoing across steel as silence fell over the entire crew, and no one stopped her as she passed, not even the armed guard by the tower who had orders to halt unknown personnel, because the way she moved, the way she stared, made them step aside. And inside the bridge, Briggs stood frozen, his new medals gleaming under the lights, his perfect record now under threat. And when she entered, he tried to speak, tried to say Sierra, but she threw a small black drive on the table between them and said, play that. And when the Admiral connected it to the screen, the room filled with audio, recordings of Briggs giving the order to leave her team behind, files showing altered logs, offshore payments, and mission details scrubbed clean, all tied to his signature, his command, his voice. And as the truth poured out, the color drained from Briggs' face while the Admiral called security. And Sierra just stood there, not smiling, not crying, just watching as justice finally moved. Slow but certain. And when they cuffed Briggs and dragged him out, some crew cheered, others stared in silence, and Sierra turned to leave. But the Admiral stopped her and said, "You saved more than yourself." And she just nodded and walked back to her jet, the same jet she had rebuilt piece by piece in a mountain cave while her body healed and her soul hardened, the jet she flew across borders and oceans without a flag, without backup, just faith in her own hands. And as she passed Ramirez, still in flight gear, he said, "I never gave up." And she looked at him for the first time and said, "Neither did I," before stepping back into the cockpit and shutting the canopy. Not to leave. Not yet. Just to be alone, to breathe, to remember her team, their faces, their jokes, the way they died screaming in her headset when air support never came. And when the Navy offered her honors, promotions, parades, she declined them all, saying, "I don't need medals, I need change." And when asked what she wanted next, she said, "I'll fly." But only for those who tell the truth. And when her story hit the press, when the world learned that a dead pilot returned to life not to be celebrated but to bring down a decorated commander, people called her many things: hero, ghost, outlaw. But none of those names mattered to her, because she never came back for a name. She came back for the team that didn't. And every night, she writes their names in a worn notebook, one name per page, and whispers their call signs before she sleeps. And now, in a quiet hangar somewhere classified, she trains a new generation, not to fly fast or shoot straight, but to listen, to question, to speak up when something feels wrong. And in every lesson, she reminds them, loyalty without truth is just silence. And they listen, because she's not just a pilot. She's proof that one voice, even one thought gone, can return like thunder and shake the sky. And every now and then, when she flies alone at dusk, the sun behind her, her shadow crossing the sea, a voice from the Liberty's tower will call out, "Ghost Viper, you're clear for landing." And she'll smile faintly and respond, "Just passing through," because she doesn't belong to one ship or one war anymore. She belongs to the truth, and it flies wherever she does.